back to the last of the beard cutting collection. As you can see, we've progressed out of our kitchen and now we're back at our campus in Bridgewater in our academy room, which is great to be back in this particular area. And today we're going to concentrate really on kind of the whole definition of beard lines and beard shapes. Any particular beard shape that's got precision work, as in it's got lines, it's got detail, it's got that accuracy, does need to be polished off really. So using any kind of decent pair of mini trimmers or detailers, in a sense, you are able to sculpt and mould and design those beard lines and those beard shapes quite successfully. However, it may be that you really want to clean these lines up somewhat. So today we're going to be looking at how we can use a cutthroat razor traditionally to sharpen those edge work, give it that finer bit of detail. This particular one is what we say is a disposable razor. Loads of brands, loads of different variations of a cutthroat razor, and it would be really important for you guys to investigate what sort of thing you would like. They do come in forms where you have to kind of add a blade, so by pulling back the safety aspect of it, then you can release this part of the blade itself just by placing your nail in at the edge, flicking it back and then sliding it over. That way it gives you these two little digits that we use to connect our blade with. So then it's really important to get a decent blade. Most of the blades come together, so you have to snap them. In this case we're going to snap like that. And then we can just unravel and get a blade out nice and carefully, nice and gently. The blade itself is going to be ridiculously sharp, and therefore you've got to really treat it with a lot of respect and a lot of kind of professional approach really. Before you put the blade in, you'll notice that there's these little kind of curves on one side. And it's important to recognise that those curves will face towards you when you start to pull it into your cutthroat itself, alright? So never touch the top part, obviously from a health and safety aspect, really be quite careful. When you're applying a blade into a razor, it's important to hold the razor slightly towards your body, so therefore gravity will take hold of how you put the blade in. These little round areas will fit onto the little divots that poke out. So we're going to place that in really carefully like so, and it will fit in quite comfortably, and hopefully you can see that good. Keep it in that position there where it doesn't fall out. We're going to then lift over the blade and then connect it, put the safety on, check it, making sure we're comfortable, and then close it down for safety. Alright, so when we're looking at lining up, detailing, sharpening, polishing, all those keywords that we use to describe how we're going to define beard outline shapes, you've really got to start to think about the products that you're going to be using to do such a thing. If the gentleman's beard is quite coarse, quite thick, it may be that actually you would prefer to use some sort of foam or a cream application by a brush. So it may be that you decide actually I really want to kind of get the best results in those areas with that sort of hair type and texture. So obviously using a brush and a product, you're going to work it all the way through. Less amount of hair, so it's finer, or there's less detail, or there's just a little bit to remove, then you're going to use something like a pre-shave oil or a gel, pre-shave gel, and just smooth that around the key area. I'm safety conscious of the fact that there is a blade in there, so if you're not using it, close it. If you're walking around, and obviously keep it closed. If you pass it to somebody, use the tang to pass it rather than in that direction. It's all about being safe. It is about the angle that you hold your cutthroat to the face. It's about the pressure that you apply, and it's about the drag, so the way you operate the actual blade on the skin. The most important thing to remember is you should not have pressure on the skin. The blade will do the work for you. So it's not about how you push the blade onto the skin. It's not about how you drag it down in a quick motion, because you could irritate the skin considerably if you do so. And it's about finding that right angle. So if we kind of think about the blade having contact to the skin, if you think about it being at a 90-degree angle and you're gliding the blade along the skin, then you're just going to create irritation. So you must find an angle that suits the contact to the skin, and to start with, recommending a signpost angle of about 45 degrees. You'll be able to vary that according to your customer's skin, the jaw shape or the cheek shape or whatever you're working with. or even the kind of cutthroat that we were using. You may have to go slightly higher, or you may have to go slightly lower, but if you thought of a 45-degree angle on contact, you are close to having a good contact angle, and then you can vary it according to your needs. All right? How you hold it as a traditional way would be with 2 fingers and then your third ring finger on what we call is a tang, and then your support thumb underneath. This hand is known as our stretch hand, and we really want to be pulling the skin nice and tight with some degree of tension to the skin. The idea is to flatten out any surface that's making contact with the razor. So really, using your stretch hand, pulling the skin up will enable that surface to be stretched and flatter for a better contact with your cutthroat razor. Always try to, if you can, use your stretch hand above the razor. It's just good health and safety practice, rather than below, which occasionally you may have to do, but there's less chance of you slipping and cutting into your hands. You'll notice I got gloves on, and the industry is really promoting the fact that you should be wearing gloves now when you're doing any form of cutthroat razoring work, as it stops cross infections. It's a must for us. We're in a training environment, so we do promote the use of gloves. All right, so we're looking at lining up. So first things first, hold your blade with a really nice, comfortable kind of approach. Find your stretch hand and tension the skin accordingly, and then start to work your blade down by using that 45-degree angle contact on the skin. What we don't want to try to do is just one big long drag. All right? It's not super comfortable for the customer, and you will tend to kind of scratch the skin slightly. The idea is like to repeat a process which is known as an overlapping process. When you're making contact with the skin, you don't want to hold the blade flat onto the skin on a stop position and then just drag it. The idea is you glide the blade onto the skin with a movement, and therefore when it catches and makes contact with the skin, it's a gliding motion rather than a stop and drag motion. Okay, so this technique would be known as a forehand technique. So it's where you're pulling the blade down towards you, and that whole overlapping process. As you get really comfortable with shaving, you're going to rely on your wrist to do some of the work. So it's a kind of a little flick comes from your wrist and your hand movement. So as you become more confident in using it, the aspect of kind of just flicking it down somewhat will come into play, and that way you can really start to get a nice clean shave. So the idea is you have that overlapping. What you really don't want to be doing is contacting on one particular area for too long. You see some people that are doing a lot of this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 strokes. You're just really going to start to damage the skin. If your blade has got contact at the right angle, 1, 2, 3 to the maximum and move, you'll do the job. If you're finding actually the hair's not being removed, then consequently you've probably got the wrong angle. So therefore adapt your angle slightly. Another technique is where you kind of start to even think about doing a backhand push technique. So stretch hands in this position, and you're going to be pushing the blade down and making contact with push backhand, reverse backhand, and then that will give you another opportunity to get into those finer little detail areas. On a gentleman, you are also thinking of doing these areas, and again, realistically, you've got a couple of options. You can lather up, you could traditionally clean, hot towel, lather, or you can use like a pre-shave oil or a gel, depending again on the amount of hair density or what's going to be removed. Okay. Top tip in this area, you're generally working downwards, so therefore you're working with a natural beard growth, so it's kind of easy to control. These areas, as you can kind of guess really, there's a lot of swirls and a lot of different movements, so you'll find that your gentleman may just have a downward growth direction, or it might swirl in, or it might grow in. Those things really do need to be thought of when you're using a cutthroat, just to make sure that you are complementing the strokes in the direction of the natural beard growth. It's more comfortable for the customer, and you will get a better, cleaner shave. If you're going against it, you only need your angle slightly wrong, or you're dragging your razor, and you can start to kind of irritate the skin, get a few blood spots, pull the hair out the follicle aggressively, and it can start to really irritate. So for instance, if the beard growth was going in that way, I'd want to come round and complement that. You need to keep your blade really clean, so between strokes you're going to start to wipe it. Now one of the things we don't encourage you to do is wipe your blade in this particular way.
It's not necessarily going to be dangerous as fruit. It's not going to cut into the towel, into your hand or into the customer, but it will start to damage the blade. That kind of wiping motion like that is just going to kind of start to make that blade quite blunt quite quickly. They're very delicate. So when you're wiping, it's a case of wiping in this way, or to rotate and wipe in this way. That way you're really not going to be damaging the blade anywhere near the amount of if you were to do it like this or scratch it around or pull it about. So it's a wipe away and a wipe away. Now with your thumb to open it up, and the blade usually pops out fairly easily. Drop it into your hand, and then from that point of view you're always going to think about disposing it in a regulated way. In our case we pop it into a sharps box, and that way then it's safe and it's out of the way. Then we would recommend you cleaning, obviously, sterilising the handle either in the barber side or the UV cabinet.
Top tips for beard cutting is understanding hair density, hair texture. Obviously understanding your customer's requirements, what it is they want, what's going to suit their face shapes, and then all the different tools and equipment kind of available for you to use to help design those different types of beard looks. And the next thing really, I guess, is a top tip, and one of the most important things is practice as always, patience as always, hand and eye coordination and detail, and just getting a really nice accurate result. Okay, so over and out from me. Try for now. Design of their look, if you like, or their kind of the way they want to present their over. Doosh.
Do I keep going now or stop?
Keep going. The traditional complementing the face shape. Some people would call this friendly mutton chops. Friendly mutton chops. Friendly mutton chops.